My name is Katie, and I'm a high school special education teacher, an amateur equestrian, a wife, a mom, and as of about 7 weeks ago, a kidney donor. After experiencing some hiccups in my preparation, hospital stay, and recovery, I decided I needed to share what I've learned with future organ donors. The goal of this video is to give you some insight about what to expect from your actual hospital stay. Obviously, there's going to be variability between different donation centers and hospitals across the country and across the world. So, if you have questions about what to expect from your specific center after watching this, please reach out to your nurse coordinator and ask them. When you arrive and check in, likely at some ungodly early hour of the morning, make sure you have your phone, ID, and ideally a small bag packed with some items to make your stay more comfortable. My previous video contains a great list of things to pack and some to leave at home if you want to check it out. You will likely have one support person with you who can stay until you are wheeled off to the operating room. One of the things that caught me a bit off guard was the fact that almost every person I met during my hospital stay was a new face. I'm not sure why I didn't previously consider that, but this was my first inpatient surgery and overnight hospital stay, and obviously my first time donating a kidney. My surgeon was the only person who was part of my treatment at the hospital who I had met during my preoperative appointments. I imagine that at some large centers, the surgeon who attends your preoperative appointments might not even be the same one who performs your surgery. Unfortunately, there's not much you can do about this, so it's just best to be prepared. The next thing that caught me a little off guard is that a number of the providers I met leading up to the surgery that morning asked me questions like, "What are you here for today?" and "Which kidney are we taking out?" It was disconcerting to wonder if all these medical professionals were really relying on my recollection of the details in order to perform their job. Like, if I had said, "I'm here for an appendectomy," would they have taken out my appendix? Finally, one of them kindly explained, "We know the answers to all these questions, but we want to make sure that you know." While I still don't totally understand this line of reasoning, I thought it would be good to share with others who might also be a little unprepared by these standard pre-surgery questions. While I imagine there's some variation in procedures at different hospitals, my husband was able to stay with me until they wheeled me to the operating room. Somehow, in my various subconscious predictions of what surgery would be like, I wasn't expecting that I would be alert and aware in the operating room. Upon brief reflection, it seems obvious that anesthesia would be administered in the operating room, meaning patients come into the operating room in a state of full consciousness. The lights and the machines and all the people in the operating room were a little unnerving, and I remember doing my best to remain calm despite what was about to happen. Meanwhile, my surgeon, who I like very much, was shooting the bull with various colleagues, showing them the latest pictures of his kids. At one point, I joked with him, "Hey, I'm going to need you to pay attention to the matter at hand here," and pointed at my belly. He reassured me that once it was go time, all his attention would be focused on me. Now, I hesitate to share about what happened next because I don't want to make those of you who are already prone to anxiety more nervous about what could happen when it's time for general anesthesia. While I haven't personally done the research, though, I imagine that for the vast majority of surgeries, general anesthesia goes off without a hitch. If you are one of those people who thinks it's best to be mentally prepared for when things don't go as planned, though, keep listening. So at some point, they had put an oxygen mask on me and told me that I would just be getting a little extra oxygen prior to surgery. Then the anesthesiologist, who was standing at my head, indicated they were going to run some tests on the machine. I didn't realize that meant that they were going to start administering the anesthetic, which would make everything seem hazy and far away. A few minutes later, my eyes were closed. The sounds of the operating room were a million miles away, but I was definitely still conscious, and I wondered, am I going to maintain this level of consciousness throughout surgery? The thought induced panic, but there was nothing I could do because I wasn't conscious enough to communicate with anyone what was going on. After an unidentifiable amount of time, probably a couple minutes or less, the sounds of the room started to get louder again and my eyes started to open. I heard the anesthesiologist say, "Katie, we're having problems with the machine, but we're going to get it figured out, don't worry." I then heard another male voice, who I presumed to be a technician of some sort, say after looking at the screen of the machine, "Well, I've never seen that before, I'm just being honest. If there's one place where you don't want to be the first of your kind, it's in an operating room." Fortunately, the nurse anesthesiologist and my surgeon stood right by me and reassured me that everything was going to be okay, that they wouldn't attempt a surgery unless they knew that they had a functioning machine, and that this is why we run these tests before surgery. After an unsuccessful reboot of this advanced technology, they brought in a new machine and replaced the original defunct one. The nurse talked to me the whole time, trying to distract me from a rather nerve-wracking experience. Fortunately, the second machine did its job, and before I knew it, the lights went out completely and stayed that way until I was in the recovery room. As soon as I regained the smallest degree of consciousness, I was transported to my hospital room, so I don't have any recollection of the recovery room. The earliest tangible memory I have is wondering why my husband wasn't there with me. While this might be more information than anyone needs to hear, I remember that I started to ask my nurse where he was, and she said she would call the family room where he was stationed and they would send him down. Several minutes later, when he was still not there, I asked my nurse about him again, and she said she had called the desk and either couldn't get through or she was told they would relay the message. Eventually, I said, "We can just call his cell phone. Give me an effing phone." But I actually said the word. Someone told me there was a phone right attached to my bed that I could use to dial outside numbers, so I called my husband directly and told him he needed to find his way to me Toot Sweet. Fortunately, he showed up just a few minutes later, apologizing and explaining that no one had called him and given him permission to come to me prior to my call. How relieved I was to have him next to me for support and to help me communicate my needs. All that is to say, don't feel bad if your personality is a little different than normal right after surgery. When it comes to how to approach these next hours, here's my best advice. Don't be afraid to ask for what you need or worry that you're pestering your nurse or CNA. Right away, get some ice water, get some juice, and get a pillow or two and put it under your knees and one for your belly. Next, ask for some ice packs to put over your incisions to reduce the swelling. You could simultaneously or later ask for heat packs to put on the other parts of your abdomen or chest, as they can help with the gas pain. Oh, the gas pain. That is going to be an extensive subject of this and my following video, and the source of my biggest revelation during recovery. Pain management equals gas management. More on that later. If they don't offer it to you, ask your nurse or CNA for an abdominal binder. This is a wide elastic band that goes around your belly and provides support and compression. It can help reduce swelling, support your abdominal muscles, which took off 2 or 3 week all expenses paid vacation while you were asleep on the operating table. A couple of other things that you can expect, but don't really need to do anything about, is that they will likely have your legs in IPC devices, which squeeze your legs gently to prevent blood clots. If they annoy you, you can ask for them to take them off for a period of time. They may also give you a spirometer, a device for you to blow into and support deep breathing, which prevents pneumonia after surgery. Don't feel compelled to overdo it with this or feel badly, though, if you can't reach the goal that they set for you. Within 4 hours after arriving to your room, your nursing team is going to ask you to get up and walk, probably to the bathroom. While I've chosen not to go into detail in this video about what happened the first time I walked to the bathroom, I would just encourage you or your support person to insist that your nurse and CNA team do orthostatic blood pressure readings before you attempt to walk anywhere. This means they would take your blood pressure while you're lying down, while you're sitting up, and then while you're standing to make sure there aren't major changes that might predict problems upon moving away from the support of your hospital bed, like dizziness or fainting. Once you're sure that your blood pressure is stable, your abdominal binder is in place, and 1 or 2 trained staff is nearby to support you, then you can make your slow trek to the toilet. Now, when it comes to pain management, the hospital will likely be giving you oral Tylenol on a schedule, as well as a couple of other pain medications through your IV. At the hospital I was at, there were other medications I could ask for, including simethicone. Simethicone is the active ingredient in Gas-X or similar name brands, and should be a drug name that you become very familiar with during this process. As I mentioned, and I'll discuss even more detail in my next video, pain management is gas management. I came to believe through this process that the primary source of most of my pain was either directly or indirectly from the gas that builds up in your abdomen after surgery. While I don't claim expertise, laparoscopic surgeries like kidney donation involve inflating the abdomen with carbon dioxide, which often remains after surgery. This and other factors made the gas buildup my biggest concern after the surgery, one that is echoed by others who I've talked to who have recently undergone laparoscopic procedures. Bottom line for your stay in the hospital is ask for the simethicone and start experimenting with other ways to manage the gas, including heat packs, abdominal massage, and walking. Again, check out my next video for more details on that. If your hospital procedures are like mine, plan on only clear liquids during the first day and an abrupt return to a more normal diet on the second day. The highlight of my evening in the hospital was undoubtedly the chicken broth and Italian ice I was brought by dining services. If you've stayed in the hospital before, you know how there are a lot of interruptions to your sleep. Hopefully, your nurse will be like mine and will do her very best to only interrupt your sleep for what's absolutely necessary. Bright and early on day 2, someone will come in from the lab and want more of your blood to check important levels. At my center, they told me repeatedly that most donors only stay in the hospital one night. They also told me, however, that if I felt like I would prefer to stay a second night, I was welcome to do so. Throughout that second day, I remember feeling very unsure about whether I should go home or stay another night. In the afternoon, my surgeon came to visit and encouraged me to just go home. He said that I would get better rest and be more comfortable, and I would avoid what he called hospital-induced depression. In the end, I took his advice and was discharged before the nurses changed shifts at 7 p.m. If you want to hear more about my recovery and how things went after I got home, check out my next video.